Hey there, this is David with Decide, and today we're talking about digital transformation. I'm going to explain this. We'll talk about it from the version of a large company. We have another video that's going to be coming that's talking about what digital transformation means to smaller and medium-sized companies. But today we're going to focus on the large companies, and we're going to actually get where the rubber meets the road on some of this. Why is this important? Why is digital transformation important? As we're emerging from our COVID lockdown, you are going to be hearing that phrase digital transformation more and more. Companies that have done well during the lockdown and doing well afterwards are the ones who've invested heavily in some type of digital transformation. And you are going to be getting advice from podcasts, magazines, online articles, documentaries talking about digital transformation and why you need to be doing it. And it's such a vague and overused term, it's difficult to actually put it down to what that means. And here's a good example. Digital transformation is the integration of digital technology into all areas of a business, resulting in fundamental changes to how businesses operate and how they deliver value to customers. I pulled that off of a site that was talking about, here's what we do for digital transformation. And yeah, that's a great quote, but it's a very 10,000 foot overview. Let's get down a little bit closer to where the rubber meets the road. Now, why should you listen to me and who am I? My name is David Moes. I'm the founder of Decide Consulting. We're a Houston, Texas-based IT staffing and recruiting company. Why should you be talking to some recruiter? Well, before I began focusing on recruiting, I was a software developer. I was a software developer for many years and a pretty good one. In fact, when we first started Decide, we were actually doing custom software development. So I have done this work. I've done it for clients. I have been down in the trenches with people who are doing this type of digital transformation work. So been there, done that. I can explain it to you a little bit more. Our target audience for today is people who want to understand digital transformation from a large company perspective. I'm targeting this as if I'm talking to business owners and executives. They hear the term, it's not too sure. These are things I have told them in one-on-one conversations that give them some enlightenment to what this is. I'm not really talking to people today on the technology side. People who've been in the trenches. It's a different point of view from them. I'm not going there. So I'm talking to the business owners, the decision makers. So what is digital transformation? Ultimately, what it means is that your company is getting involved in one or multiple of these: Agile, DevOps, the cloud, data analytics, business intelligence, machine learning, artificial intelligence, multichannel, omnichannel, automation and integration. If you've got projects involving some of these things or multiple of these, or this project is based on the Agile, you are going through digital transformation. And we're going to dig in and break into each one of these. So let's go ahead and start. Agile. At the end of the day, Agile is a different type of software development lifecycle. Now, the Agile purists out there just cringe and they do not think that this is software development lifecycle, but really, ultimately, it is. At the end of the day, it sort of replaces how we do things with our waterfall approach. What do I mean by the waterfall? Go back a few years in time, most of your companies, when they're doing a software development project, they spend a lot of time writing spec. When the specs start getting complete, they hand them off to developers. When developers are getting done, they hand it off to QA. QA. In QA, I laugh about that because what did we often do at QA? You had people who are writing the specs pin on their hat or the QA hat and say, oh, I'm now QA, and start testing things without really any QA training or QA tools. So QA was often left out of the process, and if there's something that was often cut first, it wound up being QA. And you got into this pattern with waterfall projects where you're always stuck at 90% complete of one given unit. Just imagine that the software development team has their weekly status meeting. You're asking the developer, how far along are you? I'm 50% done. Next week, I'm 75. Following week, I'm 90% done. And the next 3 weeks after that, they still say that they're 90% done and not making any progress. Why? Well, spec changes, had to go back and rework things. They got called into something else. Bad scenario. And what happens with this inevitably? You can't estimate. And you start off, every project had some type of estimate of when we're going to be done and how much is this going to cost, and you can't see it. And there's no transparency into it. So you get several months into a software development project, and all of a sudden you're thinking that I should be 75% done, and reality is I'm not close. And how do you find out where the problem is? This is very difficult to actually communicate to management and decision makers how you are doing. And we needed a better answer for that, and Agile is that answer. So how does Agile ultimately work? We split the project into much smaller segments, sprints. These are typically 2, 3, 4 week units of work. Each sprint team is made up of business people, product owners, developers, and QA, real QA. And you're getting away from hours on terms of estimating and using a concept called story points. What's a story point? It is a measure of a unit of work coupled with the difficulty of it. I'm fixing a label on a screen, that's going to be one story point. I am doing a complex calculation inside of this that's going to take a long time to figure out, and we are uncertain if we have the right or the most accurate spec information about that. That could be 16 story points. What you do is you get your team, however many story points that you were able to do becomes your capacity. And then now you can look at a team, and after 3, 4, 5 sprints, what type of capacity were they able to do in terms of story points every week? This one was 60 story points. The next sprint, they had 65 story points. Third sprint, they had 60. This is about what they can do. If there's another sprint team that's getting 80 story points done, you can look at that much quicker and say, what are they doing that they're not? And what are the differences here? Maybe we can mix up people on the teams. Agile gives us much more insight into what's going on much quicker. There's a certain set of ceremonies with the Agile. The daily stand-up is the most common thing. Everyone's coming in and reporting what they worked on yesterday, what they're working on today, any roadblocks that they have, where you can start clearing these things out much sooner. And like I said before, greater visibility into everything that's going on. You can see issues much earlier in the process if you're following an Agile. Now, you still have to be careful with Agile. I've talked to developers who are telling me, yeah, they're working on an Agile-based project, and I asked them, tell me about story pointing, and they would come back and say, we didn't story point, we're still giving it based on hours. Well, how do you measure your capacity if you're not story pointing? You need story points for that. So you have companies that are Agile-ish and some that are really Agile. Granted, Agile-ish is still better than a waterfall approach, but there is a difference. You're not going to realize the full benefits unless you go completely Agile. So let's move on to DevOps. What do we mean by DevOps? It is the coupling of development with your operations. And to talk about this, I'm going to talk about the software company or hypothetical software company and their release process. Now, it's not uncommon that a software company could have 50 versions of their software out there. It happens. We have, several hundred clients, and they have one client has version X on their own servers. Another client has their version Y on their cloud farm. We have a bunch of clients that are hosted at our own data center, our own cloud, and there could be a variety of different releases that people are on. So that is something that every software company has to deal with in some version. And you might wind up having an error in version 6.567.9b, which is a very typical way you may see a version number from a software company. And that could have been released a year ago. And if that was the case, you have a topic. How do you code, test, and release, and then merge that code fix with that version of that software and get it into every subsequent version? No small feat. DevOps gives us a mechanism to do that. So first component of this is a code repository. Code repositories, nothing new. Where do we store our code? How do we determine what version of the code or which releases the code is associated with? If you have 50 versions of your software, you're going to have 50 labels of that code out there in your repository. A good DevOps environment is going to allow you to check this in or to compile this when a developer is checking in. Inevitably, you would see developer A checks in something that works great in their environment. Developer B has something that works great in their environment. But when you're trying to do a build that night, it breaks because they're expecting something to be different in their respective environments. You lose a day. Nothing good there. Compiling on check-in keeps that from happening. You don't ever have those lost days for your QA team on anything. We often call this continuous integration, continuous delivery. That's part of that. Also part of that is when that code gets checked in, You're getting a notification to the QA and tickets associated with it. So the QA person knows exactly what they're testing. And a good DevOps environment is going to automatically build that test environment for that QA person. Going back to the scenario where we may have 50 versions of our software, do you have 50 versions of your software in different test environments? No, you don't. That's not good. That's not efficient. You want the test environment of a particular version when you need it and not have it always sitting out there. A good DevOps environment takes care of that for you. And once that QA passes it and checks that in, a good DevOps environment is going to build that release package. It's going to associate it with that tickets. That's part of that documentation that's going out to the user base about what got fixed in this. And then it's going to subsequently merge that with all future versions of the software. So DevOps is the coupling of all my development, my QA, my getting the right version of the right software and the right place to the right person. And eventually all of that is going to be to the customer with automatic releases. So that's DevOps. Talk about cloud. I'm going to zoom through cloud here because I think we all know a little bit more about cloud. But ultimately, the cloud became more and more prevalent because companies had their own servers. And when you have your own servers, where are they? Are they in a data center? Are they co-located somewhere? Are they in an office down the hall? Who's running the updates on that? Who's running the patches? Who's running the software updates? Who are the people that are assigned to that? Ooh, that got difficult. That got expensive. It got complex to run all that. And the cloud ultimately does that for you. You're talking to AWS, Azure, Google Cloud, and you're saying, this is the capacity I want in terms of storage. This is how much RAM I want. I want more data access in the day than I want at night. The cloud provides all that for you. And they typically are offering many, many nice services while they're doing all that for you. You have all these files that don't get updated or data that doesn't get updated and it's 3 years old. Do you want to put that in a storage or in a backup place where it's not being counted as the storage you're using on your day-to-day transactions? Sure, we'll do that for you. We'll do that better than you could have set that up for on your own. Lots of good things about the cloud. Companies are more and more doing this. But interesting thing was we're seeing more and more companies saying, how can I get stuff off of our own service and onto the cloud? We're seeing more and more MSPs out there helping companies do that. And ultimately what that means is that there are less network engineers and infrastructure people working for companies in the industry. Now, that doesn't mean that these jobs are going away. What we're seeing is that just more and more people are just winding up working for the MSPs and less of these people are working for companies in the industry. A very common marketing technique we're seeing is that an MSP is going to try and find out who are those companies with 5 or fewer IT people. And I want to talk to them and say, I can save them money if they get off of their own servers, move things to the cloud. I'm managing that for them. And they have a very good point when they're saying all that. You just don't see companies running their own Exchange server anymore as a relic from the past, and hardly ever see that. And also just private clouds, in addition to AWS and Azure, the private, any MSP who's got some licenses of VMware and some space in the data center can put all these together and make their own cloud and white label that. And provide a lot of benefits for their client base. Let's move on to data analytics and business intelligence. More and more data coming out there. Companies are getting more and more data, especially with the mobile economy and all the things that are available on apps and social media that are coming in. It's a ton of data that we are collecting from so many different places. And ultimately, we're asking, where is this data? What data is relevant? Who do we present the data to? And how do we present this? And just to dive into an example of where we see this, I want to talk about safety data as it relates to oil and gas from refineries. This is something that we've done projects with, and we can talk about. So a question we see with a lot of oil and gas companies is, where do we record incidents? And when I say an incident, an event happened at a refinery. Someone forgot their helmet or There was a valve and a hose connected to a truck when the truck was still trying to pull off what was still there. And that would be bad. And if you're the safety people at that company, you want to know about these things. But not only do you want to know about these things, you want to talk about what root cause analysis have we done so we can figure this out and have it not happen again. Ultimately, to look at these things, you're asking the question, what's my safety profile? What am I at risk at? And that is good data I need to know. Here's the thing. A lot of these companies that own a lot of refineries, here's what they have. They have multiple software packages. That data is in 5 different packages, and some of it's in Excel or Access databases, and files are just getting emailed back and forth. And I have incidents recorded in all these different things. And if I want to know how many incidents I had last month, how do I get that data from all these places? It's a challenge, and this is safety data. We could apply these same things to other types of industries and other types of companies. We have the same problems. A good data analytics and business intelligence team identifies where all these different data components are. They bring them together into one cohesive report. And imagine I have the question, how many incidents did I have last month? And I have to go to all these different places. The good DA or data analytics team captures all that and then actually can provide to the right decision makers some type of green light, yellow light, red light indicators about what they need to paying attention to. So this is what we need to be doing with data analytics and business intelligence. It can be complex problems trying to hunt down the right pieces of data. Machine learning, AI. This is still in its infancy in the corporate environment. Knowledge workers are going to be finding out that over the next few years that a lot of what they do may be augmented or replaced by some machine learning and AI. And just a good example of this is pipeline schedulers. Now, if you're a pipeline scheduler out there in the oil and gas industry, you need to understand FERC and how it applies with what you do. You need to understand contracts, volumetric accounting. We have material flowing through our pipe. It gets split off at this juncture. The ownership changes at this point. It is complex things that they need to know. But something about it is that there's historical data on all this. And if there's historical data on all this, you can actually get some machine learning models that can point to that data, start running different type of regression analysis on that, and you can actually build a model that it can learn what these contracts were, how the job was done, and start automating a lot of this for you. We're not really there yet in a corporate or a Fortune 500 environment, but it is getting there, and it's going to get there quickly. Now, a place that you do see a lot of machine learning and artificial intelligence in the Fortune 500 really comes into play in cybersecurity. That's one place that most places have it, and maybe not even know it. There are a lot of tools out there that are just monitoring the network traffic. And that's a good thing to use AI for, because you cannot keep up with it on a manual basis. And that network traffic that's monitoring could be internal, could be external. And just imagine you have a tool that's out there, it's looking at the network traffic, and all of a sudden, if we realize that, wow, 12 of our ports just got pinged from Russia, yeah, we want to know that. We want to alert somebody about that. This is a good example of how machine learning and AI is being used today. It's going to be coming up more and more as we get here. Multichannel, omnichannel. What do we mean by those? Well, let's start off multichannel from a marketing point of view. We're communicating with our customers and our vendors via social, web, phone, mobile, email, and in person. Those are the multiple channels that we're using to communicate with them. Well, that's a good thing. We want to have all those. Have we actually got something set up for all those to happen? That's good. But omnichannel is when all of those are integrated together and we are talking to our customer cohesively. Customer comes into our store and we know that they came in because of the social media posts we sent them and sent them a coupon. That's a good example of the omnichannel working cohesively. Now, I mentioned integration. Let's kind of move into automation and integration. Integration, nothing new. Companies have been integrating applications for years. That's always happened, always will. But how we are doing it is different. And some reasons why it's different. There's so many more applications, so many more third-party tools that we're touching. There's so much more data that's out there. And we need this data in a more transactional approach as opposed to more of a batch approach. The days of let's grab the file of today's transactions and upload that, that's gone. We are looking to send these those individual transactions as they happen to other applications within our ecosystem. And we're also wanting all this data closer to your real time. So as it's happening, we want to know what the results are. So an example of this, notifications that you receive from a buyer when you have a package delivered by UPS. We've all bought stuff online, and as soon as it gets dropped off the door, you get the email or the text saying that it just happened. Well, but some of these places are immediately asking for a review. It's fresh in your mind. I just got this. I opened up my package, and I'm very happy to see what I bought. Good time to do a review. And that review may also be immediately posted online in multiple spots. That's a lot of work. It's a lot of APIs. It's a lot of code. It's a lot of transactions. It's a lot of data that's being done right there. Amazon with package delivery and reviews like this is something that's on one end of the spectrum about what they've done, but we're going to be seeing this incorporated into more and more companies, not just business to consumer, but business to business as well. So wrapping this up, we talked about digital transformation and what exactly that means. I hopefully demystified this a little bit for you and provided some relatable examples for you that you can just help explain what some of this stuff is. If you want to find us and learn more about it, DeSciConsulting.com or shoot us an email at info@DeSciConsulting.com. Thanks a lot for your time. Talk to you soon. Bye-bye.